Happy with that?
Are you on a break?
Right.
Leeds Digital Festival.
Okay, hi everyone and welcome to Leeds Sharp's September 2020. This month we're proud to be part of the Leeds Digital Festival, the second one this year. I must be doing something right. Leeds Sharp's been going for almost 10 years and we've established ourselves as the largest and most popular meetup for .NET developers in Leeds, probably because of the beers afterwards. As of today, we have 1,339 members of developers from students, freelancers, and big corporate fish. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to first mention our sponsors. Tronic has been supporting Leeds Sharp since day one. And Tronic is an e-commerce consultancy and digital innovator with clients ranging from large sports retailers to high street shops and startups. Tronic has helped their clients grow their online revenue with .NET development, brand design, Shopify store setup, and management and digital marketing. Tronic is also working on some exciting new products in the area of augmented reality, virtual running, AI tools for digital marketing, and wearable tech. Tronic is always looking for new talent and projects, so if you're interested in working with Tronic, please contact hello@tronic.co.uk. That's hello@tronic.co.uk. Our other great sponsor is Fruition IT, and I've got Liam here to give you a bit more info about Fruition. Over to you, Liam.
Thanks, Matt. So Fruition IT, obviously we are an IT recruitment company working in Leeds. We work with most of the big names kind of in Leeds city centre and further afield, working kind of down in London now and again now as well. I did want to mention to everyone, obviously with it being kind of, shall we say, unstable times at the moment and difficult times at the moment, our free career health check service. It's kind of for if you are, wondering about how you fit in the marketplace at the moment in terms of developers. If you're wondering kind of how your CV looks kind of against what's out there and that kind of thing. Essentially, we'd arrange a video meeting with you. You can do that with myself. I'll pop my contact details in the chat function shortly. Essentially just have a chat about your skills and experience, let you know a bit more about kind of what's out there, what companies are, looking for certain skills, what the really in-demand stuff is, in terms of the latest tech and that kind of thing. And then we use that information to compile you a customized market report that basically tells you a bit more about what's out there. So if anybody does want to take advantage of that, I will pop my contact details in the chat function. And yeah, it would be great to hear from anyone who wants to take advantage of that.
Thank you, Liam. Okay, so today's talk is held by Michael Gray and Phil Doyle, both are principal software engineers at Vanquis Bank. I just want to say, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat, and we'll be answering them. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Phil and Michael.
Thanks, Matt. Just figure out how to share my screen first.
I'll make you host. That worked?
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. So firstly, thanks to Leeds Sharp for having us. I hope everyone's healthy and well in these crazy, crazy times. So today we'll be talking to you about the future of APIs in financial services. I am Michael Gray, Principal Software Engineer at Vanquis Bank. As Matt said, I actually joined the bank fairly recently in April of this year. Previously, before Vanquis, I was working in the security surveillance industry, working on a lot of different projects from securing major subway systems in the big cities in Europe, to securing airports, to a lot of critical infrastructure in the UK. The last couple of years, I've been focusing on kind of architecture at that place and how we can migrate to a more cloud-native platform. And then I've joined Vanquis to try and help bring in those expertise to help move us forward in those areas too.
Yeah, and I'm Phil Doyle, also Principal Software Engineer at Vanquis Bank. Been around for a bit longer than Michael, but not too much longer, about 2.5 years. So it was my first step into the financial services industry. Before that, I was predominantly providing web-based solutions to the public sector. Interestingly, at that time, I actually worked from home, and I joined Vanquis so I could get back into an office, and look where we are right now. We're back home again, but hey, it's quite nice to have some of the creature comforts that you have when you're working from home. So yeah, of course, I mean, we are representing Vanquis here. So it'd be great to give you a little bit of background about Vanquis. You may or may not have heard of us. Vanquis turns 18 this year, which means it can now legally drink, which I think most of you looking at the cameras probably can too. Matt did tell us that you do like a drink after these sessions, but of course, new etiquette, we're all working from home. I think if you had a beer right now, or whatever your tipple is, no one's gonna really look at that unfavorably. So help yourself. Anyway, look back a bit about Vanquis here. Vanquis primarily are known for their credit card product that they provide to people that maybe have a bad credit, that really don't get served by the mainstream lenders. So what we do is we give customers the ability to be able to use their card wisely. We give them education, and then they can build their credit, which means they can move on to larger financial products with other people. Perhaps they want to get on the property ladder or whatever. But Vanquis aren't just about credit cards. We also do fixed rate bonds. That was introduced in 2011. And also we have a loans product as well, which was launched in 2016. Given that you're in Leeds, just over the road in Bradford, which is where the Provident Financial Group, our parent company, they're based in there. And I think some of you may know them as the Provi. They've been around since 1880, so they've been around for quite a long time. You know, Vanquis is just a mere baby by comparison to Provident Financial Group. And not only do we have that office in Bradford, we also have one in London. It's in the Walkie Talkie Tower. It's really quite nice, great views. And also we have one in Chatham, Kent, which is where I'm based. So, you know, Vanquis are quite a young company when it comes to banks, when you compare them to other big banks. And, you know, for Vanquis to be able to grow, they needed to buy in a lot of off-the-shelf solutions. You know, you can't just spin a bank up out of nowhere. So you rely on those third-party systems. And I think that what's gonna, you know, what we're gonna take you through this journey, you'll see how some of those systems have helped us and potentially even hindered us. So before I just finish about Vanquis, this year we also have introduced our new customer proposition. You see it down on the right hand side there, which is we stand with our customers on their journey to better and fairer credit. It's kind of just telling you what we think about when we're talking about Vanquis, you know, as a culture. We are with customers, they're on our team. And hopefully, you know, if anyone who's ever had an experience with Vanquis would understand just how much we care for our customers.
Okay, cool. So a bit about what we're going to be talking about today. So first of all, we'll start off by discussing what we mean by APIs. Then we'll move on to the past, which is what Phil's going to cover, as I don't really have that experience with Vanquis, about how APIs have actually enabled Vanquis to take control of their own destiny. Then we'll touch on open APIs and how it's starting to revolutionize the financial services and the kind of impacts that it's had. Then we'll take a step back, take a look at what that means for the future of financial services and what role APIs have in that. And then finally, we'll finish up with a little bit of a high-level tech talk about the challenges it presents to banks, and then we'll discuss a potential solution to some of those problems.
Right, now look, I do appreciate this is a technical audience mostly, but look, we're talking about APIs, so probably it's a good idea that we just sort of talk about what we actually mean by an API, and in the best way, we've just stolen this from MuleSoft. It's quite succinct. I'll read it for you. An API is an acronym for Application Programming Interface, which is a software intermediary that allows two applications to talk to one another. Look, does anyone in the audience have their own opinions on what they see an API to be? Do they have a better definition, something that might help frame this even better? I'll take that as that you agree with that. And obviously as a .NET user group, you know, a lot of people will probably go, an API, it's probably a web API, right? But obviously APIs come in different forms, and hopefully we'll touch on a few of those as we go through this, this session.
Okay, so Phil's going to take you through the past. As I said, I'm fairly new here. It's not really right for me to be talking about the past of Vanquis. So over to you, Phil.
Yeah, that sounds like a blame shift, doesn't it? So I've been around for a little while, not quite as long as some of the stuff I'm going to talk about. So this is all a bit of a historical kind of view on things, and it's my perception of what I've seen, which maybe is going to be a bit more honest in some respect. So look, I've got a picture there of our old mobile app. This is the mobile app that we had before. Yeah, it's app. We're talking about an app here, not an API. I hope many people will appreciate that most apps would probably be backed by an API, right? But actually, this app was a third-party app. It had a load of features in it that most customers want to use. You know, be able to make a payment, look at their balance, that kind of thing. But you know, Vanquis were like, well, okay, look, we're growing up now. This is 4 or 5 years ago. You know, we're growing up now. We have aspirations, and this is probably holding us back. We don't have much control over it. But you know, it doesn't actually have an API. So what can we do to introduce something that can solve some of those problems we have as a bank that's trying to grow? Now, let's just talk about that app for a moment. So that app spoke to our platform, a third-party platform. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but quite a lot of banks have a platform that they sit on. This is the thing that handles all the card transactions. It's what we're built upon. And then as a bank, we've put lots of services products on there to support our customers in the utilization of that. And this third-party platform could be spoken to directly by that app. And so we didn't have any interaction in between that, other than the fact that Vanquis also spoke to that platform. So, you know, one of the issues that we had with that was that for us to be able to do anything with improving the features of the app was that we were bound by that kind of relationship, and therefore the speed of delivery was impacted. And that it had this reliance specifically on this third-party platform that had a specific function. It didn't have functions that enabled us as a bank to provide our customers sort of features that they might need. So we had to kind of look at that and say, well, also, let's just think about this. This is an app. We also want to have a website. We also want to support the call center through this. And this way of working just was not going to match that. Right, so where did that leave us? Well, we did need to create an API. Of course, we needed you know, this new app that we were going to create, and for us to be able to allow customers to use that app, we needed an API. Now, this is all new stuff to us. So it's that green field. You know, we've all stood in that, well, hopefully a lot of us have stood in that nice green field. It's a golden opportunity for us. We can get carried away sometimes. But also that green field promises things. And, you know, as an organization with those aspirations, those promises are just on the cusp of being there. So we had to, we were constrained by the fact that there was time scales, and also that we hadn't built an app before in-house. So we needed to use a partner agency so that we could bring those skills in. We actually look after the app ourselves now, but at the time we didn't have that. And I think that really what I'm trying to get at with that is that sometimes the way in which you build these things out can obviously define how you go about approaching this. So I said about that golden opportunity, that big dream, as it were. And there was a really talented team of engineers that were looking at this, and they could foresee where the bank needed to go. They were like, well, actually, we need to build an API that's going to support multiple products, multiple brands, in fact, multiple channels, web, mobile, call center, IVR, those kind of things. And so this API was born to match that. And of course, the engineering team have to sit around and go, okay, we've got this new API we've got to build. How are we going to approach this? And so they were like, well, hang on, what kind of data have we got? Well, it's mostly kind of, you know, it's just resources really. It's generally quite static data. We'll build it as a RESTful API. Great. And one of the ideas that was born from that was also this concept of my. So on the endpoint address, so that we understood the context of that request and that it was about that particular person specifically. The there is an endpoint that starts with my, so that if you're getting something to do with credit cards for that authenticated customer, it would be my products credit cards. I quite like that. It's quite novel. I don't know. People probably have opinions on that approach, but when I saw it, I quite like that. The other thing as well is that, you know, look, this is a .NET user group. Actually, this is all built on .NET technologies. It's a Microsoft stack, and also, you know, as a bank, we had a lot of on-prem services as well. So to be able to expose that API really, you know, well to mobile client, we hosted it in Azure as well. Seemed like a marriage made in heaven. Microsoft stack, Microsoft house, Azure makes sense, right? Right, let's just come back to some of the decisions that were made about REST. So it's RESTful API, and really what I want to try and reflect on here is that some of those decisions, if you stick to them and kind of be purist about it, it can often be a suboptimal solution. So RESTful, everything else apart of it works, but there are some decisions there that really do generate noise, you know, even now. So App Insights is littered with 404 not found on some of the resources. And I'll give an example of such a resource. One where, you know, a customer is going through to make a payment, and what we do is we go and do a check to see if they've registered or pre-registered a card to make that payment with. It makes the customer's life a lot easier, a lot simpler. But there's an endpoint that will surface up the card or cards that they've got registered. And I can imagine, I wasn't part of this conversation, I can imagine sitting down, someone saying, okay, so if they don't have any registered cards, what should we return with? Should it be a, you know, 404 not found because there aren't any? Or should it be an empty array? And it happened that the decision was made to surface up a 404. I know we can filter these kind of things out, but we don't. And currently we see lots of 404 requests because a lot of customers make payments in the app. It's our primary payment channel. So we do see a lot of those, and those kind of decisions can come back and bite you. And really at the time, you don't really notice it, but once you get quite a lot of customers making payments through something, suddenly this can become noise that you just get buried in. The other thing I just want to show, this is actually a legitimate comment within the app to do with the way the app talks back to one of our APIs, and this is a defensive comment. So again, just to highlight that sometimes if you start writing things like this in green, this is an empty object because it's an API, it's supposed to be RESTful, and it's posting to create a new thing. Yes, I know, yes it is. I mean, what does that mean? That is code smell. And again, it's those things where you go, well, I'm going to be purist, but I'm going to have to defend it because it's not really right. Just sort of highlighting there that sometimes it's great to just reflect on those things. And it's easy now for me to look back at that and criticise it. Now, I'm not really criticising it, really. I'm just looking at it saying, okay, be mindful of those things if we're going to build new stuff. The other thing as well is this move to cloud. By moving to the cloud, and I'll skip over this quite quickly, that really we have information security concerns. There's a lot of governance. Well, hang on, we're sticking stuff on other people's servers effectively. What does this mean to us as a bank, particularly as a regulated bank? And there's obviously standards as well that we need to consider. Like the payment cards industry data security standard. You know, how does that impact the fact that we're now putting data and passing it through other systems that are now new to the bank? All right, so look, just trying to really just give you a beat across some of the paths that we went through, and some of those things were, you know, this move to the cloud meant we were still actually reliant on on-premise services. But luckily, as a bank, quite a lot of our processes are based upon nightly jobs. And that meant that it was an opportunity just to be able to batch copy data up to the cloud. We moved it closer to the customer effectively. It would reduce latency. It would mean the app would be able to react faster, give a better customer experience. And also the fact that we weren't having to come down on-prem as much meant that we could utilize some of the benefits of being in the cloud so that we could be more resilient, for example. Of course, there's challenges with that. We're now having multiple copies of data in different places. There's an impact on our GDPR requirements. And also, when it comes to regulatory change, we have to consider that maybe we've made the system that is now much more complex, and that our ability to change, to react to new regulations that come out may be impacted by some of these decisions that we've made. So right, you're nearly done with the past. Let's start moving on. But let's just go back to that dream. that API said, it was, it was built out as a multi-product supporting, multi-brand supporting, and multi-channel supporting API. But one of the problems with that is that that's not how it's actually being used in this day. Right now, it's being used for the mobile app, the Vanquis mobile app. It's only really supporting one product and also only one brand. But, back then, it was probably ahead of its time. Those engineers were really, really awesome. And they actually predicted what we need. And we're talking about these kind of things now in Vanquis Bank. Back then, that wasn't the talk, but the engineers could see that. Problem is we're normally pretty useless at actually letting people know how good we are and selling, the vision that we can see. And really, I just wanted to just put a line through the history and just sort of say, look, when we're doing these things, we're coming up with some great things. We need to become that strategy. And quite often, we just find that it doesn't quite hit those aspirations, even though it's doing exactly what it needs to do right this moment, right to this day.
Cool. Thanks, Phil. So on to the present. Times are changing. New regulatory changes are forcing a much more ecosystem within financial services. And at the heart of all of this is APIs. So if we're talking about APIs in financial services, it would be remiss of us not to talk about open banking, because this is kind of at the heart of this change. So in 2016, the CMA, the UK CMA, Competition and Markets Authority, kind of noticed that, they kind of realized that data has value. A new regulation had come out, GDPR, states customers own their own data. And what they kind of realized was that banks have their data, and that their data is kind of stuck with the banks. And they also realized that there was a big monopoly kind of in the financial services with the nine big players. And they came up with open banking to try and solve some of these problems. So the idea was that customers own the data, customers need access to their data, and they should be able to share it with who they like. So in January 2018, this directive came into force, initially for the first 9 of the big financial institutions in the UK, and in March 2019, Vanquis Bank, we were compliant with one of these regulations. As of 2019, there are now 204 regulated providers of open banking, and actually if you access open banking through the APIs, you actually now have access to 90% of the UK financial services market. So the reason we mention open banking is the heart of open banking is APIs. They enable all of this. So open banking currently offers 3 main strands of APIs. There's AISP, which is your account information service provider. This is all kind of read-only data, to be honest with you. It's about your account information, your balance, transaction history. Then there's PISP, which is your payments initiation service provider, which is all about making payments, money transfers, speaking the same language through open banking's APIs. Then there's a mouthful, which is CBPII, card-based payment instrument issuer, and that's all about confirming available balance in real time. So that would, if I give an example of that, when you go on holiday, and I've had this experience, when you're at your hotel, they quite often take a deposit and they take an authorization on your card. This is kind of something that's been introduced to remove this need, so that they can check you have the available funds. Therefore, they don't need to remove some of your holiday spending money from you, I suppose. Okay, so open banking has massively changed the financial services industry. It's born a whole suite of new companies. So these are kind of broken down into 3 different areas. The first one being money management, such as Clio, Calgary. And these are accounts that allow customers to see all of the finances in one place. This is great for budgeting. Customers have a single view of the finances. They can understand what money they actually have across their different accounts, what the debts are, what actual available liquid funds they have. Another one of the main strands is your plumber money box, which are services and companies which will automatically save for you.
Let's get started. Drive safely.
Thanks, Carl. And
sorry, Michael, you might want to, you have the ability, because I've handed you over as a host, you can mute everyone else, so you might want to do that to avoid any random.
Okay.
I think some people have just forgotten to unmute themselves.
No. We know, Carl. I was just joking. So Then we have the automated saving areas, which is from the money box, and they again use the open APIs to understand people's spending habits, and they will automatically save money for you, and even invest it actually in the stock market. The final one is the payment services, which are other services like WageStream, which are kind of being introduced to rival PayPal, etc. And we actually leverage some of these in Vanquis to help our efficiency, which Phil will talk about in a little bit. So as I said, all of these services are powered by open banking APIs. So this is an example of the money management app, Clear. You may have a Vanquis credit card, a mortgage with Santander, current account with HSBC, and something else with a Barclaycard. And what Clear does is it goes out to each of these different financial institutions, uses the open banking APIs, aggregates the data, and then provides a service so you can see all of your finances in one place.
So Michael just dropped that one about efficiency. Of course, open banking, if you think about how connected it is for being able to access information about people's accounts, it just leads to efficiency. You think about lenders, think about when you've applied for a mortgage or a loan or whatever, and they say, oh, we could do with 3 copies of your paper statement, please. And you go, well, I don't get paper statements anymore. I better print that. And then I'm going to have to scan it and I'm going to have to email it. Well, actually, with open banking, if you give consent to that lender to access your account, they can go and fetch that information themselves, which is probably going to give them more trust around that as well, because it's less likely to be fraudulent, is it? I mean, it's going to be coming from the source of truth. So we don't have any hard dependencies now on that kind of manual process. And also, when it comes to lending, it's always about risk. So that confidence they might have from being able to go off and look at statements. And in fact, who knows, in the future, they might say, well, look, do you allow us to look at your transactions to see what your spending habits are, to see whether or not you are, you are good with your money, for example. And that might also help them give you better rates. But the great thing about it is because this is all machine readable, it means that it can be automated, and you would hope to see instant decisions being made on quite large lending. And again, all powered through open banking. Michael gave you that example about when you're on holiday and they take a swap at your card just to take £50 off it or whatever, just to make sure, to cover things. Well, with funds confirmation, they can actually check to see if you have the available funds without having to deduct the money. And in our own Vanquis mobile app, I said about customers being able to pay with a registered card earlier, where they can also use open banking through Pay It. And what that enables the customer to do is go through a journey that enables them to make a payment indirectly using open banking from their current account, say, to pay down some of their balance with Vanquis. Yeah, finally, Mike, finally we're here in the future. Someone wanted us to put a picture of a DeLorean here, but wasn't too sure about image rights. So you can just imagine Marty McFly and Doc Brown or whatever his name is. So,
cool. I mean, so what does this mean for financial services? Is the question, I guess. I mean, what we've seen here is new startups have been born that completely blow the experience of the big banks out of the water. Big banks are all playing catch up, and ultimately, these new startups have completely changed customers' expectations. Customers' expectations now expect real-time banking. They want to be able to have a transparent choice of the different products on the market, which is kind of starting to remove the big banks' monopoly. They expect instant decisions, as Phil touched on. It would be great if one day when you apply for a mortgage, and I recently bought a house in December, my God, that was an ordeal, getting all of your bank statements and then waiting a couple of weeks for all of that to come back around. So instant decisions, definitely, APIs are going to enable this. Like we've touched on, interoperability with our financial apps and access ultimately to our own information. So I think what we've learned over the last couple of years, especially with the Open Banking Initiative, is that APIs are actually at the forefront of creating an interoperable and open banking system. Change is certain. We can see this. Financial institutions, we all need to be innovating to keep ahead of our competition and stay relevant. And regulatory APIs are certain. Change is certain. So what can we expect from all of this? As we've touched on, continuous innovation. And we've already touched on all of the different companies with the disruptive startups. As more information is exposed, people are always going to find new clever ways to use it. One of those is probably with regards to accessibility. Maybe for people with sight impairment, Alexa, another things like Siri may be used to manage your finances in the future, build that single picture. And ultimately what we're saying is all of this innovation within the financial services is powered and driven by these open APIs. Okay, so we are at a tech talk after all, so I thought it would be good to turn this around and talk a bit about what it actually means for financial services on a technical level. So in reality, this is a bit of a problem from financial services because they are responsible for hosting the open banking APIs. At the core of these big banks, a lot of them still have their own mainframes, they have their own data centers. As we touched on earlier, real-time data is more important than ever. So these banks have a challenge. How are we going to provide open banking API without affecting the core function of the bank? Just a quick example there is in 2019, 1.25 billion API calls were made through open banking. So this is going to put a real strain on some of these banks' core internal systems. Another thing to consider is the attack surface area. We've introduced a new channel into bank systems. That's just something to bear in mind.
All right, so look, we're going to use an example here. Now, this is overly simplified, okay? If it was this easy, just one great big box and one great big database and a bit of on-prem services, it would be really simple, wouldn't it, our job? But try to simplify this just to demonstrate really where we're at and what's going on. So let's just see, look, we have a mobile app that talks to an API or APIs. In that, it can use that batch data. Remember, we move some of that data up from on-prem services using a lightly transfer, actually use ADF pipelines, up onto the cloud. So we can access that, great. But for real-time queries, we're gonna need to come down to our on-premise systems. And for us to come down onto those on-premise systems, we need to use these real-time queries. And as you can see, there's a little bit of strain on the system right now. Because people want more and more real-time information. Think about how important that is for our customers to understand how to manage their account. They need to have real-time information, and in fact, quite a lot of our customers would you know, after they make a transaction, make a payment, they go straight into the app and make a check to make sure that's gone through. Really great behaviours. However, that's putting strain on our real-time queries. Now, let's just chuck open banking into the mix. Let's just do it this way, first of all. Let's just get open banking, start talking to that same API, because it's going to be surfacing up the same information. It might look slightly differently. But what's that doing to the rest of the system that we've got there? Well, we've got more calls to that batch data. We might have to scale that up. We might have to think a little bit more about how we're doing that. But also our real-time queries have just gone up as well. Particularly when it comes to fund confirmations. You know, we need real-time information. So suddenly our on-premise systems are on fire, they're under strain. So let's just try this a different way. Let's connect open banking in a different way and see if that improves the situation. All right, so we're going to go straight, we're not going to go through that API, we're going to go straight to the batch data, we're going to go straight to on-prem services. Look, we've shared it, but at the same time, we're still on fire because it's the same amount of load. And the worst thing about that is that with open banking, we don't really have any control over what that load might look like. With the mobile app, we can predict it based upon certain factors and our knowledge, but with open banking, we don't know what other new startups are going to come on board. We don't know how people are going to start using that information that we surface through open banking APIs. So we're less in control, and it's going to be harder to understand the demand on that. So we're going to start thinking a bit more cleverly about how we enable those services.
Okay, so to try and solve the problem, what do we want to achieve? Well, I think we want to try and decouple open banking from our core internal systems to try and remove the load and also mitigate the security concerns. Another thing we want to bear in mind when we're talking about this stuff is, as we discussed earlier, regulatory change is certain, so we want to be able to react to change in the most cost-effective and efficient manner without interrupting business as usual, which is ultimately for these financial institutions and us all about our core internal systems. So we want to do this. So how do we do it? So I'm going to take a little step back here and talk about this on a really high conceptual level. So events are facts. Events mean something has categorically happened, no questions asked. Events, they can also carry state. So they can tell us something has happened and the state of what has changed, what has actually happened. So why do we care? Well, from the facts, which are the events, and the state, which the event carries, we can create different views or read this information as we please. So on a really high level, again, what this enables us to do is decouple our open banking or third-party API system from our internal systems. A quick example is if we know a payment is completed and how much the payment for, we can raise an event saying the payment is completed, add the state into there, and people using the PubSub model as a simple example can subscribe for that and then do with the data as they please. Same with the account balance. If the account balance has been updated, we can tell people this has been updated and what the new balance is. What we can do with regards to open banking, and just to be very clear, we're talking about the account information service provider here, which I think at this point in time is the one with the most amount of load. So it's static read-only data. We can store this locally and decouple it completely from the bank's internal core systems. The other good thing about this is it helps us with what we're talking about designing for change. It means that if a new regulation does come in, and we've exposed this data through events, we can take these events and create new views to provide whatever information those new regulations kind of dictate. Another advantage is that it gives us a bit more resiliency. I'm sure all of us have had periods where we've wanted to use our banking on our mobile phone or something like that, and they've been down for maintenance for whatever reason. Well, when you think about what's on top of open banking, a lot of these other new startup companies are completely reliant on it. So uptime is quite an important thing for open banking. So another advantage of taking this data, creating a local view, read-only data store of this and serving it through there is that if the internal systems go down for maintenance for whatever reason, we can still serve the data up to these companies and it can continue to function. So on a really high level, this is a before and after diagram. Before, we put in some real strain on our internal on-premise systems, which is vital to the function of the bank. With adding open banking, which as Phil said, the kind of rate of what we're getting from open banking and scale of requests is out of our control. And what we've done is we've decoupled it from our internal systems and we've moved it out into its own environment, which we can scale out and serve data as is needed. And we've done that by integrating it using events, which tell us what's happened and carry the state. So moving on, I thought it'd be cool to do a quick little demo, really simple, of some code, kind of depicting the relationship between internal systems and open banking or other third-party APIs. So what we've got is just a .NET Core Web API that represents our internal system with a SQL backend. On it, we can create account, view account information, and make payments. We have RabbitMQ, which is our message broker, which we're going to put the events on, and which the internal system is going to publish the events to. And then we have our Open Banking API, which is going to listen and consume these events, create a view, and then show them to the customer. So I'm just going to pop over to Visual Studio if it's somewhere. So if we start with our accounts controller, I think the first thing we'll do is create an account. So I'm just going to pop over to Swagger. We have two, one which represents internal, one which represents open banking. I'm just going to simply post and create an account to get us an ID. So what we've got here, we just create a new account, very simple, new balance, 100. Fine. What we're going to do is save this to the database. So we save this locally, and then we're going to notify people that an account has been created, and in there we're going to add the state, which is this is the account ID and this is the balance. So I've put a disclaimer around here. You should never publish events like this, and I'll just touch on that very, very briefly. What we've done here is we've committed state to our local data store. The problem with this is if our event bus is down for whatever reason, this state isn't then going to get communicated out to downstream people who are going to be listening for these events. So this isn't how you publish an event to a system. If you do this and you transfer a state, you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. But it's just an example to show the kind of flow.
Hey Mike, you know what I was saying about defensive comments and stuff? I think you've just fallen into that trap. That is no way I'm approving that PR when it comes to
Well, hopefully I'll never submit code like this and we won't have that problem. Okay, so what happens then is Open Banking picks this event up. So we have an integration event handler here, and this is storing it in its local database. Great. So now if we do the query here and here, if we get our accounts and execute this, we've got our account here with a balance of 100. And on this side, if we do it here, we have our account again with a balance of 100. Just to add to this, we've got two controllers in here. One which is reading from the local database, so the read-only data store, and we've got another one which is actually going out to the other API outlet, which is the first solution we proposed, and collecting that data. So that's going through and grabbing that data, so we can see here and here that we should have the same response. I've got myself lost. Yeah, cool. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a payment just to show the flow of that. So I'm going to make a payment to the account ID, and this lucky person is going to have £500 credited to their account. So again, it's the same thing. We grab the account, we create the entity, we update the balance, we save it all to the database. And again, we notify a couple of events here. The account balance is updated, this is a new balance, and then the payment has been completed. This again is going to get picked up by the Open Banking, and again, save it to our read-only database. Cool. So this is all well and good, and I guess both of them provide the same capabilities and functionality. But what I just wanted to highlight was the resiliency piece here, which if I now kill the internal system or take it down for maintenance, if I can get this up.
This is why we don't let Mike on any production systems, by the way.
Yeah, what's great is I can't actually see the different containers that are running in there, which is not helpful right now. Let me just restart it quick. This is the perils of doing live demos. Something always goes wrong. That's better. Well, the one that I want to kill is here, so the other one started. So I'm going to kill the internal, and then we'll head back to the Swagger doc, and we can see that the one where we've, where's the execute? The one where we've got the local read-only data store, we get the information, and then the one without the data store, which is going directly to the internal systems, we've lost the ability to serve data to Open Banking. So that's just a quick demo showing some of the concepts in code that we just discussed in the PowerPoint. Okay.
I think, we've obviously seen quite a lot of different things going on there. But the key take home is that, look, we weren't going to come along and just sort of say, look, this is the future. This is how you do it, because how you do it needs to be around one really key thing. It's designed for change. One constant in the future is that things will change, and particularly in a regulated environment where change isn't just driven internally. We have to make sure that we design our systems such that we can very quickly move, and also move confidently, not make a change that's going to have some kind of cascade on other systems that go wrong. In fact, I did see a question in in the chat that probably leans to that, but we'll come on to that when we get to questions. So yeah, you know, that's one of the key things. Mike, you got anything to add to the design for change? I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so important to design for change because change is certain. And in financial services now, we can see the speed at which stuff is moving, like the advent of open APIs. We've got a lot more small companies now, which are more agile, if I can use that word, than the bigger corporations. So it's more important now than ever to be designing for change because things are just moving so fast.
Yeah. And at Vanquis, we're already doing those kind of things. You know, we talk about that you know, that event-driven architecture there. You know, we're already decoupling things like our payment services so that that's surfacing up messages that get consumed by things like mobile, so it has its own copy of payments that are happening in real time, and also things like chatbot as well. So if a customer texts in, then they can get their current balance. So those systems are all fully decoupled already. But we've got lots more opportunities at Vanquis to keep designing for change.
Yeah. Cool. And that's about it from us, really. So just to note, we are hiring at Vanquis at the moment. We're always open to having great people come and join us and help improve our technical stack and culture and move us forward in the right direction. So I think there should be a link in the chat somewhere if anybody is interested. If not, there's also, you can go to vanquiscareers.co.uk and have a look at some of the open positions we have. And if you are interested in any of them and want to join us on our journey, then please do get in touch and please do apply.
Thank you. We have had a few. Can you see the questions in the chat?
Yeah, I'm tracking them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I can answer that one, Matt. Yeah, can you everyone mute their mic? Yeah, that's an easy question to answer. So I think what we'll do, I mean, if obviously people want to speak and come on camera and ask their question directly, or if they feel more comfortable, put it in the chat, that's great. Two, we've got a couple there, which is really good. So I'll just read it out from Katerina. What are the biggest technology challenges standing in the way of achieving your critical business goals? And what are the capabilities that you are missing at the moment, which would need to enable revenue growth? Brilliant question. And I'm saying brilliant question because everyone says that, don't they? They all say great question so that they can delay and then think about it. But actually, I read about this before, but I forgot to make notes, and we've been chatting since then. And I've completely forgotten what I was going to say, but it was going to be awesome. Look, one of the key things I think is, particularly in financial services, is that there are, unless you're going, to a startup, there are a lot of legacy systems. And when it comes to technology challenges, it's allowing those legacy systems to be able to move with the way that you want to move. And in fact, quite a lot of them are not really designed for change. And they often are one of our biggest constraints. So yes, they can stand in the way of achieving those critical business goals indeed. Fortunately, we do have a wealth of tools at our disposal that can help with those kind of things. I'm just trying to think of one, Mike, that's I've completely lost because I think I needed a drink. It's gone. Mike, CDC. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, one of the ways you can start the migration, Confluent have a really great article on it actually, is you think, how am I going to get the events into my system? Because we just have a database or something on our on-premise systems. And there's something called change data capture, which essentially looks at your transaction log in your database and then pops it on your event list for you. But if anyone wants to read about that, Confluent has some great articles which explain that concept a little bit further. And obviously, Confluent being Confluent also have some services which they can offer around that.
So did you start off with a legacy system that you then, like a big monolith that found yourself sort of chopping into pieces and moving into microservices into the cloud? Is that what your process was, or?
Yeah. So I mean, when I talk about some of these legacy systems, these are things like platform systems. These are things like CRM, those kind of sorts of things. But talking to what you're just saying there, Matt, that big API, big box that the mobile app talks to. I think someone at one point called it a megalith. Big monolith. It's a megalith. And indeed, there are bits being chopped away, and how it's being done actually is that where where we're bringing online new channels and those things are being rebuilt, they're being rebuilt with a microservices ecosystem behind that. And then, of course, suddenly we have those features, and then we can, like you say, chip away at the megalith and start consuming those services as well. In fact, Mike's a key part of actually how we're going to be moving forward and actually maturing that even more than where we are at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm. All right, I had another question about, I'm still a little bit unclear about the whole open API, open banking API. I think, what does it actually mean? Is it something that you plug? Is it a service that you register with, or is it a set of rules that you know, at what point can a bank call itself, you know, supporting or be part of open API? What's
So there is a registration process, and there's also a compliance process as well, where we look at they look at functional conformity as well as performance and things like that. It's actually quite a challenge, but great thing is that Open Banking UK gives you quite a lot of tools to be able to prove that you are matching their requirements. I've got to admit, I came into it to help with how the mobile provides the consent, so I can't really talk to it completely, but really there is a standard for sort of saying how we're going to do it. They use things like, you know, there's an OAuth2 flow and OpenID Connect to actually do the authorization. They dictate those, you know, they use NTLS, those sort of things. So there is a lot of standard around it, but the way in which you implement it and surface it up, I believe we basically document that, and you know, as a bank, we can't keep changing that, because again, they look at those sort of things and think, well, hang on, are you trying to impact, you know, competitor banks? Because obviously, you know, there is an element to open banking that we're opening up our data to our competitors as well.
Yeah.
So there's that element, and in fact, we also have to provide regulatory reports as well on a quarterly basis to sort of show that open banking is performing better than or equal to our primary interfaces, such as mobile web and those sort of things. So we actually,
if I'm some sort of third-party provider that wanted to, if I've dealt with Open API in the past and then switched to another bank, is it the same? Is there like is there standards there or something like that? Is it's like, you know?
Yeah, so it's all documented. It's the same APIs for every bank.
Oh.
They have to implement them the same. So the way you receive the data is in the same format. So you don't have to re-implement. You just have to hit a different endpoint ultimately.
Cool.
So it's quite cool what they've done. They've used Open API and Swagger to document all of this, so that as a people who are having to build this around, it's very clear what is expected from the financial institutions in terms of what they have to provide.
Interestingly, actually, during the transition period where people hadn't got their APIs fully formed, there was actually a mechanism where they used screen scraping. Some actually use screen scraping. So you actually gave the third party your username and password to your online banking. And they used to use screen scraping to collect that data. It was also as a fallback mechanism, but obviously that's not really particularly secure. They could actually do anything that you would have the authority to do. And so it's obviously really important that when it comes to those compliance dates, that the banks were compliant and were able to provide that information in a secure way, so that customers could also revoke that that authority for a third party to access their data.
Mm.
Cool. So we've got a question from John. Aren't RESTful endpoints only one of the tools you can use for APIs? GraphQL and gRPC also have very strong use cases. Yeah, completely agree with that statement, to be honest with you, John. Yeah, the GraphQL and gRPC, yeah, there's very good cases to use them instead of RESTful endpoints now.
Yeah, we've
Did
looked.
you use them?
Sorry, John.
Did you use them in your solution?
Not at this point in time, we haven't, no.
No, but I think what I'm hopefully what I was sort of trying to say with when it comes to that decision to use a RESTful interface was that actually, you know, it might not have been optimal, and there isn't only one way to do it. I mean, we're very fortunate as engineers to be able to have so many different tools that we can actually use. And I think that what I was trying to hit home was that those decisions are really quite important. But also we shouldn't be frightened of actually changing those decisions as well when we find that they're not suitable. And again, back to designing for change. If we're building our systems in a way that we can move quickly and change things, start breaking that apart. Should we look at, there's another question here from Adele. Yeah, you talked of moving data and GDPR. How do you ensure you're looking after that data in a compliant manner? Yeah, another great question. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if this is normal of everyone, but I felt that it's quite a great culture we have at Vanquis, and we have a really close relationship with compliance and legal, and our data protection officer. Had some really interesting chats with him, you know, and what we do is we're always obviously conscious of the data that we're moving. Luckily, again, we have tools to help us with that. You know, you can flag columns as sensitive information or personal identifiable information. We talked of transactions there. I mean, they're in particularly quite personal information. You can glean quite a lot of information from the transactions that people are conducting. So, you know, we do that. And also as employees of a regulated bank, we also have mandatory training that's quite regular, that reminds us of our duty to protect that information. So yeah, you know, but that is quite, you know, it's quite a challenge. And again, luckily, as teams, we work together very, very carefully. Our BAs are absolutely awesome as well. And you know, we've not made any missteps. Which is interesting because Andrew, straight afterwards, asked about the biggest challenges faced to moving to Azure from a security perspective to ensure your customer data remains secure. Now, GDPR isn't necessarily just about making data secure; it's about understanding the data, processing it in a considerate way. And you know, fortunately, I wasn't around at the time when those discussions were happening. But I would say that when it came to moving it, it was actually understanding what it meant to have that information in the cloud. You know, when it's on premise, people can kind of visualize the bricks and mortar a little bit more. They understand the networks a little bit more. They have trust in it because it's been there all the time. They understand it really well. Once we move to that, it's really about communicating that we are doing the right thing to protect that information, and that we are putting in all the right governance around that to ensure that it doesn't drift away from that security standpoint. Vinda, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, to answer that one really quickly, that is our strategy as a bank: digitize everything and move to the cloud where we can. But like with a lot of financial institutions, that's an ongoing process as there's a lot of stuff we need to migrate essentially. So yes, we're in the process of doing exactly that.
Yeah, I think my point really there was because a lot of these challenger banks like Monzo, for example, they're like cloud native, i.e. they were born in the cloud.
Yeah.
And they've got a massive advantage in terms of speed to market. And what holds us back, because I work for a legacy bank as well, so to speak, is the legacy really holds us back. But I think you guys being a bit smaller, you might have a chance of moving from on-prem to cloud. No?
Yeah, it depends, doesn't it? But if we can move the data around to the places where we need it, I don't think it should really stop us being as innovative and quick to market with new products as some of the more new banks like Monzo. So we just have to be clever with the way we approach our solutions really moving forward. That's what I'd say to that one.
Yeah, because we're the same issue like you have with data integrity, latency and that sort of stuff, and maintaining data in more than one place, that gets very, very complicated.
Yeah.
It is. We actually demonstrated this to non-technical people, and it involved people standing up in an audience quite far apart, chucking balls at one another. And the amount of, you know, we sort of said, okay, let's just throw a few more balls on there, and people were dropping them and everything, and said, okay, let's move people closer. And then it was like, okay, now take someone out because we've got rid of that system now. And people were just able to, and it was really great at visualizing the challenges you have, even though, you know, from a lot of people's perspective, it's just a virtual thing. Well, why is it take longer to go down to on-prem services? You know, it's just another connection. Surely it's no different to that. And again, I think that comes back to sometimes all the challenges from an engineering point of view is how to articulate that to people that don't take these things for granted, as you know, like we do. We understand these things, and it's very easy for us to forget that other people have to make quite big leaps of faith to understand that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So, thank you. So, Alec, have you made any steps towards a micro front-end architecture? If so, can you explain your approach? Not at Vanquis. At the previous place, like, I'm going to be quite frank, web front-end isn't my bag. I'm definitely not an expert in that area, but we did good on that approach and started to build up a micro front-end so that we could reuse the components in different products. We started to think that progressive web apps in some cases were a good idea. What was our approach? Understand the boundaries, I guess. Create modules. What would be modules would become single page applications, and then you would serve them in the appropriate place by hosting them within a different single page application. On a really high level, that was the approach. But like I said, I'm no expert in front end, so it's probably a really naive response. Does that answer your question, Alec? Okay.
Yeah, I think Robert F from Vanquis actually said we're just starting down the road of micro front ends at Vanquis. Thanks for the heads up there, Rob.
Don't get me involved, please, Rob.
So Anthony said, following on for the "don't do this" comments in the code, how do you recommend teams handle writing to databases and queues in a resilient manner at the same time?
Yeah, so I wasn't going to get into this, but in a simple term, you have to remove the point of failure and only have one possible point of failure at any point in time. So if anyone wants to Google it, the kind of standard way to do this is the outbox pattern. And what you do is you write your data to the database, and you also write your event to the database in the same transaction, so in the same commit. So you've got your atomic commit. And then what you do is your outbox is looking in the table which contains your events, and it's responsible for grabbing the event from your database and pumping it on your event bus, and it'll keep doing that until it succeeds at least once. This then adds a complication. If downstream, you have to be idempotent because you have to be able to handle the same event being received twice and having the same effect. I wasn't going to get into that in this talk, but hopefully that explained it on a high level. Happy to answer more questions along that line if anyone has any. And yeah, I'll put a link in the chat, which has got a really great article actually on this afterwards, if anyone else is interested.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Quickly, what's the biggest challenge, if any, you're having as a tech team working in a bank to implement this design? I assume we're talking about the event-driven design. Technically, in selling the vision to the wider business, always the challenge there, selling the vision. Mike, do you want to answer that, or I can give it a go if you like?
You can go for that, Phil.
Fine then, right? Damn you. Yeah, I don't know if we actually have huge challenges. I think that for some people it's a new paradigm, and so it's about bringing people on board with that. This is from a technical perspective. Before we even start talking wider to the business. Generally speaking, though, to be able to deliver functionality, to deliver against the requirements that are being put to the tech team, how we go about doing this is normally just under the hood. So actually, it shouldn't really impact on the delivery. It shouldn't really impact on what's actually happening. The upshot being, of course, is that we do have more resilient systems. So we're feeding into those kind of non-functional requirements now, the things that traditionally don't always get articulated particularly well, and can be an afterthought. Let's just face that. So, from our point of view, I don't think necessarily from a tech team you'd need to have to sell it at all. It's a solution to a problem that's been presented. However, I do think that it's important that, again, let's just go right the way back, we'll rewind and sort of say, we are awesome, these systems are great, yeah, being able to build stuff like this. We don't sing enough about it. And what we need to do is bring people on board as well, so they understand why we go about the way that we go about it, what the benefits are to the business. So so yeah, how I go about doing it, I don't know. I'll probably put this T-shirt on and go, look, just have a great big group hug. This is it. Let's just remove the tech side of it. Let's keep it high level for the moment. You know, so I don't really know what else to say to that. Really, it's you're trying to get me to sell it. I'll sell it to you, Matt, at some point if you like.
Okay. There's a few more questions. I don't know if we've got time, or should we?
That's fine for us. I don't mind. Or we can grab a beer and just have a chat about them.
Yeah. I just wanted to let everyone know that we're off to the pub after this, so if you fancy joining. Yeah, so a few more questions then. I think there's are you impacted by Schrems 2 ruling?
So I'm going to be up and I have no idea what that is. Do you, Phil?
I reckon you've made that up, Edward. Trying to catch us out. See if we're going to if we've been blagging it all this time. No, not aware of that at this moment in time.
Sadly not. I'm not making it up.
Oh no.
But I appreciate it's a technical talk, so perhaps it's a bit unfair. But it's basically particularly the invalidation of Privacy Shield and EU data transfers to the US, and potentially two-way traffic back into the EU data centres, and also potentially affecting lack of adequacy post-Brexit of UK data centres.
Okay, so we can probably answer that then. We don't have anything in the US, so probably not. We're basically UK bank, and so I think we have Poland too, right, Phil? So yeah, all of our data resides within the EU. It doesn't head over to the US and back or anything like that.
But when it comes to like vendor onboarding, we do have teams that look at where is the data being held, where is the data passing through. I certainly know of actual challenges where we've gone, actually, we would like to use this particular vendor. And then we have people that go out and actually speak to those vendors and make sure that the data is going to be held in a compliant way and also held on shore and those kind of things. So, but yeah, we don't, fortunately, maybe, we don't have to soak too much time into thinking about those things. But yeah, no, it's a very good point to raise though.
So basically, you're UK server based, and that's how you're right. Okay. Thank you.
Someone's calling on the T-shirt. Yeah, thank you. It's the old logo though. That's the problem. Robert, yeah, so cut that one. Ivan, what other successful decoupling approaches have you successfully applied?
Have we successfully applied at Vanquis? I mean, there's different approaches to breaking systems down. So events are just one way. There's stuff like the strangler pattern, which is essentially creating an interface between old and new, which mimics exactly what the old was, and which can be a reverse proxy or something similar to that. And then what you can do is, as you're breaking down your system and decoupling what's underneath, you have your reverse proxy, and when you finish migrating one piece of functionality to your new system, you just switch the reverse proxy over to point to the new as opposed to the old, and then you've kind of decommissioned part of that system. So that's, I guess, we could talk about that as another decoupling approach. Off the top of my head, can you think of any other ones, Phil, off the top of your head?
I'm trying to think of ones that were actually utilised, and they're probably, you know, it's that kind of thing. The moment the call stops, you go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it's been mostly around decoupling through events at Vanquis. I can't think of anything else that we've done.
Yeah, I mean, if we start talking about decoupling our code, mediator pattern is brilliant, and I'm sure everyone on here has heard of the mediator, which is by Jimmy Bogard, which is an amazing implementation of that. That's excellent for singular responsibility principle and decoupling stuff with regards to that. Yeah, don't know. Good question.
Yeah, I mainly asked the question because our the system I work on is we have a core system which literally, if it goes down, everything's down. And obviously I'm a developer. I don't do much in that. I just wanted to ask or suggest something to senior management and somehow sell it and say like, look at that, it's great.
Well, read up on the Strangler pattern, because that might be a friend there. If you can create the same interface to whatever's using this single point of failure, you might be able to build out the new systems underneath without affecting business as usual. It might be a good approach, potentially.
Cool. Just for that.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, I'll just come back to the mediator thing, is that we do utilize that in that megalith. And actually that does make it so much easier to apply things like the Strangler pattern. It's much easier to understand the kind of boundaries of those commands and queries that we're doing. So actually by doing that, it's given us a much easier job of being able to move away from having a great big monolith. So yeah, it is pretty awesome actually, mediator.
Okay, well, thanks Phil and Michael for giving us a window into the world of APIs in the financial service industry. Thanks also to Adele for organizing this talk. And for a list of all Vanquis API endpoints and their auth tokens, please check the show notes on our meetup page. And I'll see you all next month. That was a joke, by the way.
Yeah, we got that, Matt. We got that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for organising. Good talk, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.